Hey guys, I just wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about counterparts. First, I'm going to talk about the literary criticisms, the perspectives, and then I'll talk counterparts for a minute, and then I'll talk about the different perspectives in terms of counterparts. So, when we are talking about those literary perspectives, we focused on five different ones. Um, the first of those is, I'm sorry, I'm going to refer back to this because I didn't remember. The feminist or gender response. Okay. So when we're talking about this, primarily we're going to be looking at gender roles. We're going to be looking at how men and women are treated, how they are expected to act, and how they're expected to act differently, how they're treated differently. Okay. Um, then we have psychoanalytic, and that's looking at like the deep-seated why are they doing what they're doing? What happened in their childhood to make them act the way that they are acting? Do they have uh, father issues? Do they have issues from childhood? Were they abused? Whatever. You need to, that's what we're looking at with psychoanalytic. Marxist is looking primarily at social class and money. Like, do we have a social class structure? Is it because of the social class structure and the financial aspect of the world, or that character's financial situation, that they are acting the way that they are acting, or how is that affecting them? Then we have reader response. Reader response is coming back to that idea that everybody is going to bring their own stuff to the table when they're reading a book. So everybody is going to respond differently. And the way that they approached that in the book was by looking at one person's specific response, them making a claim, and then using textual evidence to back it up. But another way that you can approach that is by thinking about, okay, so how could different people respond to this? Mrs. Bradley would respond to it differently than, say, you guys would respond to it, then, say, Mrs. Charlton would respond to it, then, say, your grandma would respond to it, or even a freshman. I would also think like me prior to kids responding to a story would probably be different in some cases than it would be to me now. So age, background, um, all of those things that go into like kind of who you are and what you've gone through and your makeup of who you are kind of influence the way that you or that any person is going to read a text and respond to it and interpret it. And the final one is new historicism. And when we talk about new historicism, we're talking about the context, the historical context of what is going on during the time period. Okay. So, what is going on for the author? Where did they grow up? When did they grow up? What political situations are going on during that time and influencing them, so that they would be writing the characters that they're writing. But then sometimes it's also important to look at what's going on in the structure of the actual story itself. Okay, like historical wise, like political wise, all of that kind of stuff. So those are the five that we are focusing on. We're talking counterparts. This story, we're looking at this guy who works at a law firm. He is like he's supposed to copy legal documents by hand, right? So he's one of the worker bees in the law firm. But basically, from the get-go, we see him as being kind of lazy. We see him as being super angry. He's in trouble all the time. He's not getting his work done. He's constantly thinking about, oh, I just want to go out and get a drink, and that kind of thing. He leaves in the middle of the afternoon, goes out and gets a couple drinks quickly, comes back, and his absence has been noticed, which is an issue. And so then he has to take the file up to the boss, and Mr. Elaine, the boss, is like kind of tells him off in front of a client. And he realizes that he left two letters out of it. So he's like, I'm going to get in trouble. He's supposed to get this work done by the time he's supposed to leave. And he's thinking that if he can get it done, then maybe he can get an advance on his pay so he can go get another drink with his friends after work. Um, Mr. Elaine realizes that he is missing the two letters. He comes down, tells him off again, and basically tells him, like, you're in trouble. I'm going to tell the other partner, and tells him off in front of the, like, nice, happy client who is also female. Um, So he tells him off. He realizes he's not going to get it done. He's hopeless. He is kind of daydreaming about like physically harming his boss. And he leaves work knowing that he didn't get it done, knowing he can't get an advance on his pay, and so he goes and pawns his watch. When he's done with that, he goes and he drinks with his friends, and that turns into another situation because he's like at first kind of like, oh, I did this, I was snarky towards my boss, and blah 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 blah. Um, but then he is showing jealousy towards some of the other guys, and he's annoyed because he has to buy someone a drink when he feels like he shouldn't have to, and he's annoyed that he's spending so much money that he doesn't have. And he flirts with a lady, and she completely just ignores him. He loses um, what's that called? Arm wrestling. He loses arm wrestling with an arm wrestle with someone, with one of the guys that they're out with, and he's just this anger is simmering and building and building and building and building throughout the story. And he goes home and he has we learn at that point that he has 5 kids and a wife. He's kind of living in the slums a little bit. He walks into his dark house. His wife isn't there. He's calling for her. She's not there. And he's like, "Where's my dinner?" And she's not there. She's at church. His son comes out, and his son is going to go like warm up his dinner. And he's like, "You let the fire go out." And then he chases him around the room and starts to beat him. And that's where the story ends, with the kid begging him not to hurt him. Okay. So when we look at this story and we look at the different perspectives, it gave you guys kind of an example of how you could go through each one of these perspectives and analyze it. Feminist, we would be looking at that kind of macho male kind of attitude that he's trying to project. He is trying to hold that role. He is trying to act like he's this big tough guy. People would expect him to be this big tough guy because of his stature. And so he's holding on to that. You would also, in this case, look at the role of females. His wife should be staying at home and taking care of him. And she is, the time that she leaves, she is at church. So that plus the kind Miss Delacour and the couple of other ladies that they see in the at the bar, they're kind of painted as a more of like an innocent good kind of picture, right? But definitely supposed to be holding their female roles. And maybe that is having that femininity. Okay. The the other thing that it, no, I think that kind of wraps up kind of the feminist idea. Psychoanalytic, why is he the way that he is? Why is he so angry? That is pretty much where you would focus if you were doing psychoanalytic. Why is he so angry? Why is he talking about beating his boss up? Why is he like daydreaming about physically harming? And then at the end, why is he actually beating his son? A lot of psychoanalytic uh, theorists would say that he probably had abusive father when he was a child. He has issues with authority because of that, most likely. So he has this perverse, like weird way of looking, of like projecting that he's angry, and he is putting that anger back out on those people of authority. And then because he can't actually act on that, he is taking it out on his son in kind of like a really backwards kind of way, of revenge for what he went through as a kid. Um, Marxists would be focusing on the social class and how that kind of working class versus that little bit of upper class, Mr. Elaine versus him, and the difference between how they act. Mr. Elaine, is above him, able to tell him what to do, able to kind of get on him and tell him how bad he's doing and tell him he's going to get in trouble and whatever. And him at this like menial job that he feels like he's bored, he feels like he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't appreciate it, but he has to because he has a family to take care of. In that level, um, he that would be why he would be that angry person. That would kind of be his reasoning behind what he's doing, that social difference, that social class difference. And then the whole idea of money in there is pretty huge because he's trying to get an advance on his paycheck. He is pawning something so that he can go and drink, but he's not using that money to take care of his family. So a person there could also look at his irresponsibility with money and with in that, but primarily probably because he's in that working class and so unhappy there. Reader response, the option that they gave you was looking at one person's perspective. They gave that her idea and then she talked through it using textual evidence. And that's what you would do. Basically, in this case, you would look at someone maybe, you would maybe consider your own perspective. What really bothered you about this text? What did you think about it? With your context, with your background, what did you take away from it? And why? What parts from the book? Why? And then new historicism. This one focuses on, let me go look at this one again really quick. Yeah, this one is looking again at that socialized by working class, the masculinity of it. It kind of is in this case, referring back to what we just talked about with the feminist theory, because during the time period, the expectation of him as the person that he was, because of who he was, because of how he, like, his job, because of the way that he looked, because of his class, people would have expected him to be a certain way, and he's almost kind of fighting against that throughout there. So that would be kind of the historical situation, and that one in this case is kind of looking at multiple of the perspectives that we have already talked about: the Marxist, the feminist. And even maybe a little bit of the psychoanalytic, but especially the Marxist and the feminist, of what is expected during that time period on him. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to put in a question on Google Classroom. You've read it, we've talked it through. I'm going to put a question on Google Classroom, and I want you guys to say which theory you kind of related to the most, which you thought represented the story the best, which like you appreciated looking through that lens the most, and why. And then you're going to have to respond to two of your classmates on there. You can just respond to their response on there. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. I will also be dropping an assignment for the lottery in there as well. I hope you guys are doing awesome. I'll talk to you later.